So what were all those partitions? If you look at what's most popularly tagged among those different groups, it pops out immediately. That data is still already there. You get a high school group. It's the most popular tag in that group in my work, or in my world. The family group. We've got a group from summer camp, undergraduate. These are very clear groups. So my mom is on Facebook, but she's not randomly on Facebook. She's very clearly in this family group. If I want to make use of Facebook for family, that should be as obvious to me as a lay user as it is to me, the network user. That data is already there to be made use of. We're not making use of it, and so instead we're building another site rather than saying, well, how do we build a site for families? Well, there already is a site for families. You just have to figure out how to partition them off from everyone else. And so now I'd just like to spend a little bit of time with a slideshow to bamboozle you of other various network shapes and sizes. This is someone who I actually cited or showed earlier. This is her network. We can see different sizes. Again, the clusters again. This is somebody, this is a admin researcher at Microsoft, and this is his network. He has these two people in the center here are the ones that link the researchers and the one that link the administrative communities. Obviously, that's very important to this person's world. And you can see you can partition this, this Facebook network just as clearly there as you can if this person knew it. Again, this data is latent in there. He's like, oh, that's obvious. It's this group and that group. Well, of course it's obvious to him. How can it be obvious to you? Here's Dana Boyd's network. Dana, the social media researcher. It's huge, but just another sense, you can attach thumbnails and stuff. You can make it pretty, but it's not very useful. And this shows you how when you actually have a lot of ties, it can still be a bit messy. But in the sweet spot of up to about 500, it's very clear, actually, how people partition these groups. So there's lots of tools to leverage these networks, and there's lots of APIs that are available to be rolled into software. And if you want to play around and get a feel for this yourself in the meantime, TouchGraph is a really fun program that will give you a network that looks something like that right off the bat. Nexus will give you one that looks fancy but is unintelligible. FriendWheel shows you how people, the popularity of FriendWheel shows you that people don't understand networks because the tool is meaningless, but it shows all of your friends in one place, and people go, wow, that's so fancy. Can't understand it. That must make it valuable. Then finally, my SockNet, which is a lame name. I'm not a marketing guy. So this is just phase one. We're actually in trials here. I'm into phase two now. I got some funding to do that, and that's now a software program that's going to morph into some CRM software later. But all right. So we're good. So what? So lurking with any social network profile is a host of clustered peers. It's hard to see on this thing, so I have to go back and forth. You discover these groups through community detection. You can help bring coherence to a profile and help it scale. If you want to consider planning a party, you don't want to invite everyone. How do you sift the wheat from the chaff? If you want to recommend a concert, you don't necessarily want to do collaborative filtering where you find other people that like the same concerts as you. You want to find out which one of your buddies want to go to the concert and the person that you're both friends with, and invite that person as well. They might not even like the same music as you, but they'll still go along because you're friends. How do you find that out? How do you send out important news, and to whom is news important? It's not important to everybody all the time, but it is important to most of the people some of the time, some of the people most of the time. So nearness, being local, is now a social property as much as a spatial one. And again, it's not the same as collaborative filtering. Networks do not signify similarity. It's not that we're all social so I can see who's like me, but they do signify community. They're the people that do things together. They're groups that act. They're the people that disclose information to each other. Let's find them and make use of them. So looking forward, it's almost aphoristic here. I wish I could make it into a haiku, but I didn't. Particular relationships, these person-to-person, that's what creates networks. We don't live in a world of networks. We live in a world of particular relationships that we can build networks out of. But unless we're building networks, we don't have networks. We just have a whole lot of lists that we think are networks. These norms of access, oh yes, just come onto my site. That's what creates overload. And so now everybody's on the same site and we're up for trouble. So thinking local is one solution. It's one way of saying, well, why don't we just restrict it to whatever's near me? And that's simple. Then I can access that. But it's only a partial solution. We need to create contexts so that users don't have to. And that's where I'll end. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
All right, thank you.
So do you think Facebook, Twitter, those types of very large networks, to maintain their relevancy and usefulness for users long term, need to create tools so you can do those partitions?
Yes.
That's
Otherwise,
the strategy they need to be adopting?
well, what we're doing right now is we had a very engineering solution. Well, we'll just let the users tag. You know, and this is, again, how these things scale. 1 in 100 will tag their network very effectively. 10 out of 100 will tag it in a half-assed manner, and the rest of them won't even bother. So we can't let users sort of... User-generated content doesn't mean that all users always want to generate content. Yeah, we already see network nomadism is common, and it will continue to be common. Twitter's the next big thing because people got sick of Facebook. There's so much value latent in Facebook, but it became such an overwhelming site to use that some people are blowing it off and now going onto Twitter, and they'll blow off Twitter and go onto Google Wave, and then they'll blow off Google Wave and go on to N, whatever N is. And you know, instead of creating the next big thing, we've already got audiences. Audiences are the things that are the hardest to capture, and we're squandering them because we're not helping them make sense of themselves.
You talked a lot about the characteristics of social networks. I was just wondering if you've done any analysis about the growth drivers behind them, and whether you could give us some insights in what really gets these sites to grow and what kind of tipping points there are when it really becomes...
So people often talk about that in very individualistic terms. You get the celebrity or the opinion leader or somebody on the site, and then people follow. But these things tend to grow in a very nodal fashion, where you get a block of people. So MySpace started with groups of people very locally. It was, you know, a Burning Man crowd. It sort of flooded within the Burning Man crowd, and then it seeped out to their network. And gay men in San Francisco were very interested, and it sort of flooded to their network. And so how each of these little nodes just sort of popped up. And the reason that happens on this more macro level scale is because of some pretty fundamental properties on the micro scale. And the most fundamental is, in the network world, is triadic closure. That's if I'm friends with you and I'm friends with you, I want you guys to be friends with each other. So, you know, this is how we create this site, is give people awareness of their mutual friends. They link together, and then they'll want to pull other people in. And so that way you start building community one closed triangle at a time. Sites that will facilitate that help. Sites that don't facilitate that will make people feel like they're in this sort of very particular ether rather than something that looks like community. So community is something we interpret at a very small scale of just feeling closed, as well as at a very large scale of like, oh, I'm part of this more value-laden community. Does that help?
So, do you see kind of the future beyond all these?
Usually.
You do see the future.
No, I wish, man.
So beyond
Tonight's lottery numbers are.
Social networks springing up, which, as you say, paradox, it's not that convenient anyway. Is the future going to be the one main one who does this first in the best manner and allows you to split up your own network? Will we end up with one massive, maybe owned by Google?
Yes.
Yes,
Skynet is taking over. I think that it's actually common online to talk about Google as Skynet now, which I think is as funny as it is terrifying. Yes, OpenID is a really good way forward. So now if you can capture all of your ties across OpenID, then what you don't need to do is say LinkedIn is my work network and Orchid is my friend network. I know nobody here probably uses Orchid, but it's also on OpenID, I guess unsurprisingly because it's Google. But then you can partition your network and then bring people from one to the other. Look, people on this network are really tied or really friends with a lot of friends with people on this other network. So I will start closing those triangles. And if you're the site that can link into OpenID and show that to people, then you're the site that can help users bring in other users. If you can't show that, then people don't know, they don't have a mental model of who is also on this site with me and what role can I play, not just in generating content, but generating sociality.